Lately, I found myself wondering what attracts me to a video game. What makes me decide to pick up this game instead of that one? With some things it's fairly obvious. Naruto was because I am a fan of the manga. Bloodborne was the gothic aesthetic. Moonlighter was the premise of half salesman, half dungeon crawling, which sounded unique and interesting. Regardless of each of their qualities, those were the things that led me to either search more information about them or outright buy them immediately. You know, the shut up and take my money moment. In fact, it was Bloodborne that made me want and ultimately get a PS4 in the first place. With Pathway, it was simply a whim, a completely random occurrence that was an impulse buy that led to me trying a game I knew nothing about. So today, I will be reviewing, if you can call these messy videos that, Pathway on the Nintendo Switch. A game with a mixed bag of good and bad that also left me mixed on my feelings. So let's get to it. Pathway is a procedurally generated adventure game with turn-based strategy combat, usually with a squad of 3 characters that you can pick at the beginning of 5 different campaigns. You can usually recruit a 4th member while you go through the adventure. However, most events are shuffled every time you pick an adventure, so the characters you can recruit in this way also change. You can also adjust how hard and how combat-centric each adventure is. Each character has specific attributes and advantages, such as being a medic or a brute, and even extra damage against Nazis or undead enemies. And yes, the game has both. There are characters that share the same attribute, especially when you start unlocking more of them by completing in-game achievements. They start feeling less and less special. They do have their use, as if they die, the characters you had before can't be used on the next adventure unless you pay, but it still cheapens them a bit. The attributes can be used in specific scenarios to get a positive outcome, and trust me, you always want to pick the trade option if you have it. Sometimes it just straight out lets you auto-beat a battle or give you more loot. I don't know if it's true, but the gamble option, which is the only usually second option you have in scenarios, always resulted in negative outcomes for me, so I stopped using it altogether, even preferring to leave instead of using it. The loot wasn't always great either, and since the game adopted a color scheme loot system, so you know, with rarities and stuff, sometimes things weren't really worth it. Even if you can turn anything into money that you can use to upgrade your overall carrying capacity, car fuel, supplies, and ammo capacity. The problem is that the scenarios quickly turn repetitive, and even when they are unique, they aren't very compelling. In fact, the story in general gets a big thumbs down from me. It's not really the focal point of the game, so it's not the biggest deal breaker. However, enough dialogue and attempts at least compelling you are made that I have to consider it a loss. Essentially, you pick some characters and try to stop the Nazis and cult people from getting their hands on powerful artifacts. That's the plot in a nutshell, and despite there being very small stories, let's call them that, sprinkled through the adventure, the main plot is practically non-existent, and the ending of the last adventure is the same as the one you completed first, with only the ending scenario changing. The combat being the only thing that motivated me to carry on. So once you are in an adventure, you have a web-like design. Each dot on the map is a new location that might or might not have something interesting on it. Although some do indicate what they are, for the most part they are always a mystery. To move, you require fuel for your jeep. If your car runs out of fuel, you lose a bit of health when you move. As I said before, the scenarios are quite bland and the web map's design is as well, mostly being uninteresting deserts. It's a shame, as the game has a great 16-bit art style with some modern tricks up its sleeve. Sadly, it feels very unutilized in most of the game. Even the combat arenas are not that great, the last one, in my opinion, being one of the worst ones. Not to mention that they are designed in such a way that I had a hard time figuring out what was a wall or not, or if an enemy had cover or not without the indicator, leading to some times where I screwed up because I wasn't paying enough attention. The auto lock on also did screw me over a few times like that, locking onto a barrel instead of the enemy I wanted to shoot. Sometimes I would press too quickly to shoot and end up blowing a barrel instead of the enemy. In combat itself, you have 2 moves per character in each turn, only being allowed to attack and move once. Characters gain experience and level up having a very rudimentary skill tree that you can pay to reset at any time. Not all characters can use all weapons, having some that can only use shotguns or pistols, some that can wield knives or use repair kits for your armor. This I liked a lot. It made you think of what characters were better for each scenario, especially since some weapons are better at dispatching certain enemies than others, and some characters had way better unlockable skills than others. Every character has bravery points, and some of the abilities that use this resource are absolutely amazing, making an enemy attack an ally or healing with no use of resources. The points are gained back by just hitting enemies, so they quickly become extremely viable to be utilized multiple times in one encounter, especially since healing and grenade throwing utilize supplies, which were the thing I struggled to keep managed the most. Every time you reload, you also use an ammo supply, but I actually never ran out of it, so the game is clearly extremely generous with those. Although once I did find a way to break and exploit the AI by going into a narrow corridor and picking them up one by one without them reacting, I did find it compelling at giving me a challenge and forcing me to think about my next move. This is where the game shines, and you can absolutely get into a lot of fights. However, these only do so much, and after a bit, I just wanted to get to the end of the game. All scenarios just led to more loot, so if you aren't in the mood to replay on harder difficulties, then there is nothing really to keep you going. The scenarios are also highly inconsistent in difficulty. Of course, this is only my account, but the second scenario was way harder than the third one. This also being because it was way more drawn out than the third scenario. Despite all my gripes, I did have fun with Pathway. I could only recommend it for people that already are familiar with turn-based strategy games like this, as the difficulty spikes are weirdly accentuated. But I do believe if you click with it, it's easy to grind to an easier ride. But at the same time, the fuel in particular I felt was a bit rough on the player. I don't know, I was a bit left on the fence with this one. It's a competent, even good game with lots of room for improvement. I do think this will resonate with others more than it did with me. If they ever release a sequel, I will check it out, but unlike Bloodborne, Not at the Storm or Moonlighter, I don't think I will ever have the itch for one more run. Let me know what you thought of Pathways and if I missed anything important. Thank you very much for watching, make sure to drop a like and subscribe, and see you next time.